So I thought X would like this story because at this point I've mostly gotten over it. This takes place when I was a kid in the mid-90s with my parents overseas in Spain for a vacation. It was called Matilda Ride. We were between a major city and a smaller, yet still kind of big town in central Spain. The town was basically an oldish mining town that was still somewhat going strong, but was slowly falling off the map. We decided to stop off in the town as it has a few more American things we recognize, and as little kids me and my sister don't want to eat the good ass food over there and instead want chicken fingers. In the town we look around for a bit and I spot a Thomas the Train looking thing in the side of a large mountainish hill with kids lined up outside of it. Begged my parents to go, so they decided to split up, my mother taking me and my dad taking my sister. It was called Matilda Ride. It really was something like Matilda's Riders or something, but horribly translated into English. It was a small poorly made version of James, sort of like the picture I posted with this, but was slightly faded red so it looked pink. The train was on the tracks of an old minecart system that was barely big enough to fit the engine and all the cars onto it, often making me get scared that the side of the engine would crash into the walls of the mine. It didn't, however, but it was obvious the kids were all on edge when we entered the ride. The cart was too small for an adult to sit in it, so many of the parents stood on the outside for the engine to get going. It had a voice box in each cart saying things in Spanish, then in English, things like Matilda go through the magical tunnel to find her friends. And beware. Danger is around the corner. But all in a slightly gargled manner because of the voice box's age. The first thing we saw other than the walls of the cave were a few scenes of a magical mine where there were poorly made minecarts on a small miniature set that aimed to make it look like the cave was far bigger than it was, to little effect. So far it seemed like a poorly put together ride from a shithole area of the country. As we began getting further into the ride, it was turning out be some fun at least. Until we got to a certain point where the room was more than lit up. At that moment I can see the cart behind me, which was the second before the caboose, was noticeably more worn, more freshly worn than old, as many of the other carts were fine aside from a scratch or two. This caboose cart had some stains on it towards the side, but the kid didn't seem to mind at all. They had some of that shit on them too. My first though was that this guy brought fucking pudding onto the train, and as an arc I began saying he had food on the train to the conductor of the ride, that he broke the rules and had food. The conductor jokingly calls to the kid saying if he had some food, and the kid didn't respond. You can see where this is going. The conductor repeats himself 3 times before getting a bit panicked, so stopped the train at the actual next stop, which was 3 seconds away, and checks on the kid in full view of all the other kids. The kid was quickly taken away after a small radio talk in Spanish before the Spanish kids screamed, resulting in some commotion and a couple of other guys coming in and removing the kid and all the usual stuff you'd do in this kind of emergency. The train car was detached and the conductor began again like nothing happened. I know I'm jumping straight into the action here with a thing like this, but that's how fast I remember it happening. Me making a fuss about the kid having food, the conductor realizing that the kid was actually dead, and then moving on after a minute or two of messing around from them. After that incident most of us were full on crying, some kids vomited from crying so much, and others were having a hard time breathing from all the wheezing they were doing. The conductor of the train quickly tries to calm us down by moving on to the next segment rather than just getting us all out of there ASAP, but once he realizes that it won't work, he just skips the remaining 2 areas and leads us out. The conductor, 2 workers, and a few others usher the mother of the child inside a little office in one of the tunnels. As far off in the distance ambulance sirens are heard. My mom takes me out of there as fast as she can to the area she said she'd meet my father back up at. After about 15 minutes of waiting they return and we leave after my dad gets me chicken tenders, not even trying to joke here, that's literally what he did to calm me down. As we were getting in the car to go back to our hotel, I looked over to see the ambulance bringing the kid in and noticing him cough harshly, so he was still alive. The blood seemed to be coming from his arm, so it's safe to assume he lived from all of this rather than dying right there in the train car. Must have passed out instead and been mistaken as dead. I've tried my fucking hardest to look this shit up so bad, but every mention of Matilda ride I get is either some random shit about the movie Matilda or a ride from Disney or something. I'm certain it closed down because of it, else it would have been featured on some clickbait article or something by now.